Paul Barron and Brad Kimes from Digital Perspectives conducted a recent interview. Here in the US, we will play XRP Control's XRP bond and the digital assets stockpile. I also want to go over some more background information and details from this interview. We also have some significant updates from August. In this video, I want to focus on just a handful of those. This is where we should begin. Concept of issuing US digital asset bonds. This is interesting because the Trump administration issued the EO, which is known as the strengthening, and then, when you and I were discussing this on Twitter and X and you mentioned price controls, I went in and thought, wait a minute, there might be something that's somewhat close to this right now. It's called, I believe, Strengthening America Leadership in Digital Financial Technology. You can search for it online. However, because that was the problem that was going to actually drive it, he canceled the framework and all of the restrictive policies that had been before it. Subsequently, I believe it entered the Treasury Borrowing Advisory Committee, where they were talking about the potential effects of digital asset markets and their expansion. As I understand it, this would enable private firms to issue tokenized bonds. All right, I thought, wait a minute, when you said that. This is the regulatory framework for what may be an oil model comparison with price control. All right, describe your position on this, because that made me think a lot. Yes. By the way, thank you. By the way, whenever I can, I take all of this theoretical material and bounce it off of somebody like you, the Honorable Chris Giancarlo, the former chairman of the CFTC, who was on stage at XRP Las Vegas a few years ago, or anybody else I can reach, because I'm always curious if this is legitimate. What's this? Because whatever a legitimate store of value token is, it must have a trustworthy store of value and level. A genuine currency is made up of three components: a medium of commerce and a store of value. But what's the other one? It has an additional requirement, which is a unit of account. Thus, a currency is composed of such items. What I see then is XRP, which is not legally a security, but is, in my opinion, a commodity that is gradually turning into money. And it requires time, similar to how it took around 15 years for the US dollar to become the world's reserve currency, to regain its position as the world's reserve currency following World War II. Correct. There was a fight. It required time. At Bretton Woods, they made that decision in 44, 43, whatever, but it was still difficult. It was up against competition from other currencies. All of that being said, when you return to XRP and the reserve for digital assets, that reserve is distinct from they do not sell their assets from the Bitcoin strategic reserve. They are able to sell the assets from the digital asset stockpile reserve. I see it this way: if you look at oil, they can both create and purchase it. They therefore figure out how many barrels of oil they should produce each day in order to maintain the price at the level required by demand. They can also release reserves onto the market to lower prices if these things get out of hand. Have saw this done previously. Now, you will see a brand new bond issuance if you add to the digital asset bond issuance, which I believe is being done by the US Treasury and possibly even private issuers like you are discussing here. What is the result of that? It was a real estate default swap problem if you go back to the 2008 and 2009 crisis. That's right, there is a financial crisis. The central banks are unable to print their way out of the money crisis that is at their doorstep. What is the answer then? Create new revenue. What is the new currency? New markets for bonds and digital assets. That brings us to the present day. If they create US digital asset bonds for assets that are domiciled in the US, such as Bitcoin, XRP, Solana, and ADA, in my opinion, that presents an opportunity to obtain it without incurring any expenses for the taxpayer, as well as to acquire a new stake with them. Trump is already beginning to show these stripes on this zebra he loves. And I see this as being similar to wartime bonds because that's exactly what I'm getting at. He's doing this with a few companies, including Intel. Okay, we'll have to wait and see how this all works out. Simply put, everything here is highly speculative. We must, of course, wait for the official policy to be released. Accumulation of digital assets. Recall that the US is still attempting to determine how it will be possible to obtain fresh assets in this regard. Keep in mind that Trump's unilateral order accomplished a lot of this, therefore no taxpayer funds were used in its execution. There may be something similar in the works behind the scenes as they are attempting to develop new ways to issue a different kind of digital bond and use the proceeds to purchase some of this cryptocurrency. When we start to go into digital bonds or add those bonds to ledgers like the XRP ledger and other ecosystems, the global bond market, which is worth about $140 trillion, is where a lot of price growth might occur. There will undoubtedly be a need, and there is still a great deal of work to be done, but what they are proposing is a very real possibility in the future. Naturally, we won't celebrate or get thrilled until we have confirmation. However, as you can see, Brad Kimes and Paul Barron are both quite excited and thinking along the same lines. They do think Trump will do something in this area and follow suit. We'll find out in time. As soon as we have any updates, I'll let you know. Please share your thoughts with me below. Is this something that will happen in the coming days, weeks, and months? Or could this be years in the future? I'd like to know more about your mental process. Of course, here's another clip after that. I'll play it. When certain groups begin attacking the XRP camps, it is hilarious that this is so tribal in the context of crypto in general because the attacking camps, whether they are driven by bots or by humans, trigger a reaction from the XRP community. This improves the algorithm and now has a structure that is somewhat incentive-based. Thus, each negative XRP thread creates 10 times as much algorithmic engagement. Therefore, whether we encounter a Bitcoiner, an Ethmax, a Solana, or any other group of that kind, they always attack XRP. As we observe this on the MSI, it simply serves to reinforce the XRP message, and I wonder, what are these people missing? Tribalism in cryptocurrency is as prevalent as it is in sports teams, isn't that right? You know that everyone has a favorite, and people voice their opinions about things that they don't like. Let me tell you what I believe is happening with Bitcoin. The individuals who have been advocating for Bitcoin for years, in my opinion, are beginning to see that they have put themselves in a difficult situation, and that difficulty is, a digital store of value. The reason for this is that I have witnessed it for the past 5 years. In the realm of digital assets, I have witnessed Bitcoin go from the technological future to merely a digital store of value, akin to a digital wealth store of value. And that's the use case for Bitcoin. There is a link in the description if you would like to receive that course for free. After completing the course, kindly let me know your thoughts.